Hello everyone, I'm Runrare, and real fast before the video started, I just wanted to say thank you. This is going to be a little bit of a long intro, so if you want to skip it, I really don't care. But this video is going to be mostly about, combat and improving in the game, and trying to catch your first win. Give you a few tips and tricks, and, sprinkle some advice in there. So, with that being said, for all the people who didn't skip the intro, I just wanted to say thank you. I really do appreciate all the views that y'all have given me. I really didn't make the content that I made to get views. I made it to inform people on where stuff was at because I felt like there were a lot of things that were confusing about Spellbreak and I wanted to address them. Being a beta tester, I kind of feel like I had a responsibility to inform people, especially when it came to like the location of Dead Moss, because I felt like that was really confusing and I don't know why it wasn't on the map. So if you wanted to know why I started making videos, that's really why, at least when it comes to Spellbreak. And do expect more content in the future. I really do love this game, and I just want to see it grow, and I want to help out as many players as possible. Also saying that you can come catch me on Twitch if you feel like it. But without any further ado, let's get straight into the video. So when the match finally starts, you're going to be presented with this map, and it'll have a bunch of portals on it. They're randomly generated. You'll select a portal and you'll be dropped through it. If you're with a team, you can right click and bring your team with you, provided y'all are in the same circle when you go to right click. I'm not sure what it is on controller, so please forgive me. All these tips will apply to both inputs. Just, I'm not really familiar with controllers, so I can't tell you what buttons they are. Now, when you're dropping in, nothing's really going to slow you down. Nobody gets to the ground really much faster than anybody else. Everybody pretty much drops at the same rate. One thing that will slow you down though is other people running into you or you colliding with other players. It'll stop you dead in your tracks and it'll take you a little bit longer to get to the ground. Now when you do finally land, I suggest landing above players. That way you can shoot down at them. It's a lot easier to shoot down and a lot harder to hit people when they're above you in this game. And then you can move in and secure your kill. Now when you do go to loot, you're going to be on the lookout for potions, shield shards, belts, amulets, and boots. You're also going to look out for scrolls. Now keep in mind you can look around while reading a scroll, but these are going to help you level up your talents, and it'll help you in the late game to secure kills and maybe stay alive a little bit longer. Now I also want to address that you can drink your potions while walking, and you can also continue drinking them when you go off of a ledge, provided you've already started drinking. Now I want to cover positioning a little bit better, and I'm going to use this clip for my sentimental letters video, so please forgive me if you've already seen it. I just want to explain a few things that go on in the video so that you can better understand what I was doing. Now, there's not really many cases where you want to be on the same playing field as everybody else or on the same level. When you're using stoneshaper, it can be to your advantage. Now, right here, I do miss a lot of shots. I'm trashed with lightning, but I broke line of sight because I realized that he was going to retaliate and shoot back at me. I don't know why my sorcery couldn't reach over there, and his could, but that's something else. Now be aware of your surroundings. People will sneak up on you. I'm really lucky in this situation that I managed to finish him off before he could. He almost got me, and maybe you won't be as lucky. So keep that in mind. Also be aware, I didn't really see him clip off the side, and then he managed to get a few hits in on me, I think. And then he starts trying to use cover. And it's a little too late for him. He does stop moving. I think he was trying to drink a potion. So just remember that you can walk around while drinking potions, so that doesn't happen to you. Now, height with any gauntlet is good. I just want to let you know that with stoneshaper, your shockwaves will travel a bit further downhill, and your boulders are easier to hit. But height can be good for any gauntlet, regardless of what it is, especially with ice or other long-range gauntlets, and then you can move in to finish off your kill. Now, bad positioning can put you in a spot like this, and that was really just my fault. I shouldn't have gone down. I shouldn't have given up my height. Now, mana vaults are going to be extremely contested. You're going to find yourself fighting a lot more players around here. They do contain legendary loot, so that's why they're going to be so contested and popular. Now, in this video alone, I fight off 4 people trying to open a mana vault before I can ever even get the loot out of the mana vault. So keep in mind that they're going to be contested, and I want to explain why I switch off of the character I was fighting here in a second. Now, he's already low, and this dude's new to the fight, so I switched off of him to deal with the person that had more health. The other person was so much less of a threat because of how low they were that me finishing that fight was better, and the other person was already running, so I wasn't really worried about them trying to get back in the fight. Now, that being said, I do get overconfident here because I do know that they are low, and I take a lot of damage that could have been avoided. Now, all the damage I just took was all due to my own fault. None of it was their fault. I lit everything on fire, so I took all that damage myself. Now, you will get third-partied a lot in this game. I get third-partied shortly after I healed up there, and the key factor to winning when you get third parties is locating where the other player is and then keeping track of them. If you lose sight of another player, good chances are that they're going to kill you. I would suggest keeping them in the middle of your screen. It'll give your crosshair less room to have to adjust to. There'll be less distance between your enemy and your crosshair, so you can be able to adjust it faster. You can also shoot through objects, but just be careful. Splash damage can be an effect, and it might cause you to lose a fight or injure yourself, so just be careful. Now, when you do find yourself in a 1v1 situation for the win, locating the other player before they can locate you can be the deciding factor between winning or losing. Surprising a player and doing damage to them before they can even tell where you're at can really help you win a fight. Now, that being said, there are some really good players that can snap back and end you in a heartbeat. So just be careful, be patient. I know it can be frustrating trying to get your first win, but if you keep at it, keep your head up and keep practicing and understand the game a bit better, it'll help you out and you'll get there eventually. Now, I want to warn you about fractures real fast before we move on. Fractures are massive craters or holes in the ground that if you fall into them, you can become exiled. It'll send you back to the lobby and you're dead. Same thing with the edge of map at the east side and the south side. And if you're in a team-based mode, this will leave your teammate alone to clutch out the rest of the game. And ironically enough, my teammate actually does clutch out the rest of the game. And I wanted to use this as an example of how small zone can get and how much damage zone can do. Now, my teammate did do a lot of damage to all the players in this zone, but the thing that finishes off the guy and gets the last hit on him is the massive tick damage from touching the zone wall. My teammate did an excellent job of avoiding the zone wall, so just keep that in mind. You're going to want to really be aware of where your body is and how close it is to the zone wall. Now, to start this off, we're going to hit Pyro. I'm the most familiar with it, so I'll be able to explain it the best. It's kind of like an RPG. It's got a splash effect to it if you're maining it, and the closer you hit, the more damage it'll do. If you hit a player directly, it'll ignite them, and it'll cause extra damage. I think it's for a total of 8 on burn damage, but I could be wrong. Now, the sorcery for fire isn't really that offensive. It does do damage, and it can deal more damage, but it's really more for crowd control. For example, I didn't want him walking backwards, and he walked straight into it, and I'm really not sure if it was the stone or the firewall that got him. Now, you can also light toxic puddles on ground and do extra damage to players that are standing in them. You can also use Firefly skill to reposition yourself and possibly get a better angle on a fight. It can also be used kind of defensively against wind, ice, or toxic. Toxic will turn it into Dragonfire and make it stronger. Ice and wind will hit it once and then it'll dissipate, and then they can shoot through it. Now, one thing you don't want to do is put yourself between a stone shaper and a firewall. They can carry the fire along with their stone trails, and it does extra damage as well as burn damage, so it can really end a fight pretty quickly if you're fighting a stone shaper. So it's something you want to avoid as a pyromancer. Now, this is going to be a late game situation with pyro, and I wanted to give you some real world example of it so you can see how long the bullet time is and how long it takes for it to travel, and how hard it can be to gauge how far you need to lead your shots. So I'd recommend using a gauntlet that you're really confident with, especially when people are in the air and at different angles. I do use stones, boulder, to hit them in the air for a little bit of damage, but it's a really ineffective method of dealing with people in the air. It takes way too long for the cooldown to work, so you'll find yourself being exiled by better players with wind or some other gauntlet that can shoot faster than you would using boulder for people in the air. Now, I try to find some cover and heal up here. If you see me drop my big shield potion, it's because the way my keybinds were set up, I was pushing one in control at the same time so I could heal and crouch, and the way it was set up, it was causing me to drop my slot. So if your keybinds are kind of messed up like that, you might want to consider changing them and fixing that so you don't end up in a situation where you need that. Now, if you notice I use flight to get out of that toxic cloud, that repositioning saved me a little bit of health and probably led to this. Now, fire is really close to medium range gauntlet. It's really ineffective at long ranges, and it does start to drop at longer ranges. That being said, it does still do as much damage up close as it does from a distance. So if you hit somebody long range and you're, using a gold, for example, it will do the 48 damage if you hit them directly. So it could be effective if you're really good at predicting where people are going and deciding, where to lead your shots at. But otherwise, it might not be the best gauntlet for long range. Now, stoneshaper can be a favorite. You do spawn in with a natural 20 shield that you can gain shield for by smashing the ground up to 20. You can also carry fire around, and it does do extra damage, as I mentioned just a second ago, but I wanted to reiterate that for the stoneshapers. And it will do additional burn damage. You can also do the same thing with a boulder, and it'll do extra burn damage as well as, I think, a little bit extra damage for when it hits. Now, for some real world interactions with stone. Now, as you can see, I'm hopping rooftop to rooftop. And the reason being, I'm not exactly sure where everybody is, so I want to try to keep height. Now that I see all the players are on the ground, I do give up my positioning a little bit, but it's only because I'm confident, and I saw that most of them were low, or one of them at least was. So this fight was going to be a lot easier than I expected it to be, and so I 1v3'd them all. Now you are going to have to lead your shots with stone, because sometimes it just takes a little bit longer for it to travel to it. As you see, I missed and then I corrected. So just keep in mind, it does take some travel distance and some travel time. Now, if you're height and you're using any gauntlet, it's going to be a better advantage for you. Stone travels further downhill, and boulders are easier to hit when you're above someone. So keep that in mind, no matter what gauntlet you're using. You can also use the boulder to hit people in the air, but it is, again, really ineffective. It takes too long to cool down. Also be aware of your terrain. Some hills will stop a stone shockwave dead in its tracks, and then going down the same hill, it can flow right over it. So being higher than your opponent, especially around areas where the topography changes a lot, can be really huge for stone shapers. And you just want to be aware of the things that you're on and around so that you know that your shots are going to make it. Because there's some places where it acts a little weird, such as the broken walls. Sometimes some of them you can go straight through, and then some objects like trees and some other walls are going to stop it dead in its tracks. Now, toxicologist, it's kind of like a shotgun, and it drops off rather quickly. So it's really difficult to hit people from range, and not only that, but you're going to do a lot less damage. It is meant to be used up close. I would say be cautious of your own toxic puddles. No matter what skill levels you gain, you're never immune to your own toxic puddles. You do become immune to your own toxic clouds, and it gives you a dash or a shadow step effect. And when you're invisible at max skill level with toxic, you do more damage. Now, for some real world interactions with toxic, this is me in an end zone that I won not too long ago, and I just wanted you to see how using toxic can work in endgame and how it can be at a disadvantage sometimes. Because, again, it is really hard to hit people in the air in this game, or people who are above you. So keep that in mind. It does spread out, so the left and right direction isn't really that difficult. But the way it arcs and directionality can be a pain. I do waste a lot of shots before I do finally manage to clip him twice again for the win. So just keep that in mind. It can be kind of difficult to hit people, especially when they're flying through the air and at a distance with toxic. So just watch out for it and try to practice hitting your targets at every height. Now, conduit or lightning. Now, it's kind of like an AR, except you don't want to tap fire. You really do want to keep spraying it. Every shot you shoot increases in damage up to 5. So it increases by 1 up to 5 every time. It's really good at range. It's also one of the ones that doesn't drop off all the way, so if you can see a player, you can hit them pretty much. Some of the other gauntlets do drop off pretty rapidly to the point where they hit 0, such as wind. At certain distances, it won't do any damage. Now, lightning sorcery is a little weird. It strikes for 20 at first, and if it's not on the same level as players, it doesn't hit them reliably, at least the blue circle at the bottom. So keep that in mind when you're using it, and maybe that's why you're missing. Now, when you max out the skill levels, it'll strike 5 times. It'll also recharge your ruin, so you'll be able to use your ruin twice, and it does 100 damage during that time. Now, here's me using it in game. I just wanted to, like always, I just want to give you some real world examples of the gauntlets in game. Now, keep in mind, I am pretty bad with lightning, so all these fights that I win in this game, I'm actually pretty surprised that I won. And also, please excuse the footage. It was old footage from beta and when I first started recording and streaming, so it is a little bad. It also combines really well with toxic, so it will cause a paralyzing effect. So if you're running harmony, you can run right by it and everything. If you're not running harmony, you might want to avoid being near toxic puddles so you don't get shocked and paralyzed. Now, moving on to Frostborne, it's kind of like the sniper class. It does more damage at long range, and the longer you pull it back, the more damage it will do, up to a certain point. It also arcs really strongly when you don't draw it back all the way. But even when you do pull it back all the way, it does arc. I'm not exactly sure what the arc distance is, but just know that draw time and the arc are synchronistic. They go hand in hand. Now, the sorcery for ice can block some shots from coming in. Later in the video, there's a little clip of it. But it's going to be a little while before you start getting pro plays out of using ice. It is kind of a difficult one to use, so just be patient. And just try to keep your head up, like always. Get some practice in the lobby so that you can fight real players that are actually moving around, so you can get more practice with deciding how you need to lead your shots or not lead your shots to hit targets, and possibly even adjust your sensitivity so you can figure out, what works for you the best. I will let you know right now that the scope sensitivity at the bottom there only affects the bow when it's fully drawn back. So if you're having trouble hitting shots there, try adjusting that sensitivity and seeing if what works for you. Now, once you start hitting shots and you get into the game, I wish you the best of luck. There are a few more things I want to touch, and I want to give you a few real-world examples of you using it. So, when you do land in with ice, you are wanting to stay higher than everybody else. It'll give you much more advantage. It'll make you harder to hit. Now, this guy actually blocks my ice shot using the sorcery for ice, I do believe. And I have to wait again, but just try to get them low before you drop in and get close to them. I do know it can be a little frustrated shooting at people from a distance, but at least try to hit them once before you give up all of your height, and then you can start moving in and go for the kill. Now, here's an example of me making a dumb move real fast. Now, I just want you to keep in mind that when using ice or gauntlets that you're not really good with, you want to be aware of where all the players are. I accidentally fall off, and I have no idea where any of the players are. I didn't see anybody, and then this guy surprised me, and by the time that I had a chance to react, it was already too late. So keep that in mind, it could be dangerous. Now, Tempest is actually a really strong class. It's kind of like an SMG. I don't really have that much footage of me using it in-game. Just know the further people are away, the more you're going to have to lead the shot, and the closer they are, the less you're going to have to lead the shot. It is a lot like an SMG, so it shoots pretty rapidly. You can do a lot of damage really quick, even though it does have pretty low stats comparatively to the other gauntlets. It does do that damage a lot faster. Though I would watch out, the drop-off is pretty quick. It goes to minimum damage within a few meters, so keep that in mind. You want to be a lot closer to people than you would think when using Tempest. Not saying it's not effective from range, but there is a point where it drops out, and no matter how accurate you are, it's not going to hit them. Being in the air is also one of your biggest friends when running a Tempest. You're going to want to stay in the air as long as possible. All of the skill levels with Tempest involve being in the air, so you're going to want to get used to all of them and try being in the air as long as possible. Now, you can stay in the air for almost infinity as long as your mana bar doesn't hit 0. Now, in sorcery, when you max it out, or skill level, will allow you to use your tornadoes to stay in the air a little bit longer too. This will also make the cooldown time for your gauntlet a little bit less. It reduces it by about half, so it'll recharge about twice as fast. It doesn't look that much different, but you can really tell the difference when you're in the air, and then when you touch ground, how much slower it charges. So just keep that in mind as well. Now you can also use your tornadoes defensively, though it can be a bit hit or miss. It seems like ice isn't really that affected by the wind draft, though it did cause me to miss a few shots there. But there are certain angles where projectiles will go straight through, so keep that in mind if you're using it. It will block lightning entirely as long as you're right between the middle. Any shots on the left or right of the middle of the column will go through and arc around it, just like every other thing. It does affect ice in that way too, just to a lesser extent. And this is true for all projectiles. Anything that flies through the air will work in this way. They will arc and they will change their direction while the tornado is going on. If they're shot close enough to the tornado, they'll get sucked up in the wind current and then they'll be slung over there. Just keep that in mind, and I walk through and I show each gauntlet and how they pass through. So this will give you an idea of what to look out for when using wind and trying to use the tornado defensively. I would also like to mention that if there's a status effect on the tornado and you are caught in it while you're maining Tempest, I typically believe that you get launched out if you have the skill level for it. So you'll take less damage than a player who isn't running wind or isn't their tornado. So if it's your tornado and it does get affected by one of the status effects, it can launch you out and you could take less damage than the other player. Now, I did find that stone wind doesn't really affect its shockwave ability. It can pass straight through it. So you're going to want to watch out for stone shapers. The boulder, on the other hand, does get caught up in the current. So it can be used to your advantage or it could be to your disadvantage. You might also want to watch out if someone is shooting at it. Some people are decent enough or lucky enough to hit you while it's arcing, so watch out for that. You could run into it. It might not happen to you. Another thing I want to mention that I didn't really get the footage for is you can also block shots, and I do believe this is true with every gauntlet. With a projectile, you can hit another projectile midair and cancel it out. Now typically this only happens with me by accident, and I think the last time I saw it was earlier and I wasn't recording, and I hit someone's fireball with my fireball and just watched it explode midair. So it's something to keep in mind. It can happen, and I do believe that's it for this video. Now if I missed anything or there's anything you'd like me to expand upon, please let me know in the comments. I'll be more than willing to do that. And without anything else to say, y'all have a great evening, and I really hope that this playlist helps y'all out and helps y'all improve as players. So I'll see y'all next time.